Hey there, tubers. Today's project's going to be putting these two boxes of parts right up in there. So what I've got here is the cruise control kit and the linked pedal kit. The cruise control kit is a 7378640 and the linked pedal is a 7378650. And what I've decided to do is to take the canopy off to get it inside here, because this is going to be a fairly intrusive project. You've got to pull the steering wheel, the dash, and the floor, and then you pull your hydrostep pedals apart. So I wanted to do it inside, not outside, and then that way, if for some reason this ends up taking longer than it should, it's indoors so that this dash and everything behind it isn't out in the weather for too long. But the reason I'm doing both together is a lot of the steps that you've got to do for one, you have to do for the other. So if you were to just do the cruise control kit, you've still got to pull the steering wheel, the dash, and the floor, and the same with the linked pedal kit. So I've decided I only want to do it once, so I'm just going to do them both together. What I'll end up doing is showing the first part and the last part of the videos the same, and just split them up into two separate videos, just in case somebody only wants to watch one of them versus both. So with that, the instructions say that this cruise control should only take about an hour to install, and the link pedal should take about 2 hours to install. I'm guessing that's somebody with experience and the right tools right off the bat. So we'll see how close I come to that, but I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna take a little bit longer. There's not a lot of parts in the cruise control, but there is in the link pedal. So we'll get started here. I'll get some tools out and see where this takes us. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull the steering wheel here, and this little plastic piece is just pushed in. So I get a little screwdriver here, and be careful not to chip the chrome on the plastic here. Just kind of work your way under it, and then that should just pop right off. And there you've got a nut and two threaded holes that'll help you pull the steering wheel off. So I'll grab a steering wheel puller and we'll get that set up. Alright, so a 17 millimeter took off the center nut and lock washer for this, and then I've got a steering wheel puller kit, but the holes for this are just a little too close to make any of these work, so I had to kind of go at an angle here. I don't know if you can tell, but I was still able to get on that and pop it loose, and there, the whole thing just came right off. So that worked out. It's not on there too tight. It's still a fairly new tractor, so I didn't think it'd be rusted or galled on there yet, so it came off fairly easy. So the next thing will be to get this dash torn apart here, and I'll see what's all involved in that and get right back. One thing I forgot to mention is that I did take a grease pen. I marked here and I marked the steering wheel so that when I put this back together it goes back in the same spot. Not that it really matters. There's no master on that shaft here, so the steering wheel can go on anywhere. And what I've found is, as I use the tractor, the steering wheel rotates anyway, so the steering wheel never stays in the same spot. But I just did it just in case. So as for pulling the dash, I'm gonna have to take the screw out here, pull this handle off for the throttle, and then there are 4 screws. All right, one here, one down in here on the other side, one down here in the bottom, and then one right there in the side. And that's all that holds that dash on. Now the only one that had any length to it is the bottom one. The other 3 are the same length. And then this whole thing just pulls off. Now none of these were very tight. I'm guessing it's just because this is plastic, and if you over tighten it, you're probably going to break it. But I could see where these might work their way out over time, because they were just a little bit more than hand tight. But I'll put them back that way, and if I start seeing them work their way out, I'm probably going to end up putting some thread locker on them, just in case. So I'll get this handle pulled and we'll see what the dash looks like when it comes off. Okay, well, the dash doesn't want to come off very far because the electrical connection for the hazard lights is kind of holding it up. Let's see if I can get in there to show you. So I think I can get my arm in there and disconnect that connector in there, and then I think there's enough length for the dash that I should be able to get it off at that point. So I'll get in there, see what I can do, and go from there. Well, I got it off. I had to get my arm up underneath down by the pedals here to get to it, and it wasn't too bad. It's just a couple of tabs on each side and it came right off. I initially tried coming in through the top and there just wasn't any way of doing that, and I ended up putting tape around the steering wheel because this plastic, when I was jiggling it around, was starting to rub on this and I didn't want to lose any paint, so I just put that tape on there before I pulled this off. And there's just enough length on this harness to just get it over the top. So now the dash is apart, so we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step is to pull up the floor. Now with that dash off, it would be in the way because you can only pull it to this side, and they want this floor panel and the center floor panel pulled up. So I just disconnected all the connections for the dash and just put the dash over to the side here. And with that gone, you can kind of see the holes a little better. One here, one there, one there, and one there. And those are what held the dash on. That was a 10mm that took those off. And now to pull this mat, it's very simple, but the pedals are gonna keep me from getting that mat up. So I'm gonna have to come down here, and these 14mm hold these pedals on. I'm gonna have to pull the pedals out so I can get the mat out so I can get to the floor plates. So I'll get rolling on that and be right back. Alright, well, that was ridiculously tough. I ended up breaking 2 box end wrenches trying to break those free. And what I ended up doing was getting a 6-point half-inch drive with an extension to get it out here past the step and get some leverage on it. And I put a lot of torque on that before they broke loose. It was insane. I know that you don't want these coming out if you're using the pedals, but that was ridiculous. I can't see where they put any Loctite on them, so I'm not sure how they got them that tight. I mean, underneath on the tractors, probably a little bit of moisture and dirt, but I can't imagine that being the cause of this. But I will probably put some Loctite on it, some of the maybe green stuff, so it comes loose in the future. But why they were that tight, I'll have no idea. So they just pull right out, these top slots. So now I'll just lift the mat, and then I've got some bolts under here to take off and get that center section and this one off, and then we'll move on from there. But I'll get this pulled apart and let you know what's going on. Okay, so there are 8 bolts that go around the centerpiece, 4 on both sides. 12mm will take those off. This piece will not come out without either taking the draft speed drop linkage out or the brake lock out. Now this one, there's a cotter pin back behind the seat here you could probably get to, but I'm not entirely sure that this needs to come out. The directions are very vague in certain aspects. It just says pull center section and right floor up. Doesn't tell you how, doesn't tell you anything other than that. So I had to kind of experiment here on this piece. If you look underneath, there's a bolt here, and then one here and one back in here, and they all have rubber bushings on them. So I think those are the only ones that matter underneath side here anyway. 17mm takes these off, 14mm takes these 2 off, and then there's one 10mm bolt right here, or a 10mm head, and then I think this whole thing should kind of pop out of there. This is the only one that has access on the top. These other 2, you have to access them through the bottom, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to have to pull those bolts to get this plate out or whether I can tip this up enough, but I'll get to working on that and be right back. Alright, so that took a little finagling to get out of there, but it does come out without taking this piece out. Now that is a metal piece, the fenders are metal, this piece is metal, so you just gotta be careful that you don't scratch stuff up. I was able to get it out of there without hurting anything, so that's good. And I think this piece can stay for now. I don't see why I would really need to pull that out other than to just get this section out, because most everything that I need to work on is going to be right in this area. So I'm going to leave it for now, and if I have to pull it out, then I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But I'll get going on the next step and see where it leads us. Alright, so that took a little finagling to get out, but I got it out. Now that is a metal plate, and these are metal fenders, metal all around, so you got to be careful, make sure that you don't scratch things up when you pull this floor out. But I was able to get it out without taking this piece out. You do need to raise it up, so you do need to take all 8 bolts out, but it came out just fine. And I think for the most part this piece can stay. I think everything that I'm going to be dealing with is going to be down in here, so I shouldn't have to take this piece out, but if I do, I'll probably get back in here and just pull that pin, pull that out to get that out, but I'll cross that bridge if I need to. So at this point I'll probably split the videos up, for one for the cruise control and one for the linked pedal. The first part here is going to be the same for both of them, and then putting everything back together is going to be the same. So I'll put a marker here in case you want to watch both, that you can skip ahead so you're not repeating the same drivel each time. So with that, we'll move on. Okay, so the next step on this linked pedal install will be to remove these 2 outer nuts. They're 14mm, I'll take those off, and then I'll get this bracket in here, and that's what holds the handle to turn the link pedal on and off. So I'll get those nuts pulled, get this bracket in, and be right back. So there's what she looks like installed. Just make sure you get those nuts tightened back up. And then the next step will be to install this bracket that's supplied. And there's two pre-drilled holes here that match up to the ones on this bracket. We'll get those in there, and then the supplied bolts, which are 10 millimeter, will drive those in. We'll get that put on, and then the next step after that will be to install the lever up here. So be right back. Alright, so that bracket is now installed, got those tightened up. The next step is to take the bracket here, make sure that it's curved the right direction, slide that on, and then they give you two tapered washers. I'm not sure if you can see there. And you put these together. Now it doesn't say how to put these together, so what I'm going to do is have the dishes apart, because I'm thinking that you need to have a little bit of give to move this handle, and so if they're both opposite, then there's a little bit of flex in there. Could be wrong, but I'm thinking that's probably what it is. The next step will be to put on flat washer and two nuts, and it's a 14 millimeter. I'll drive these on, and you just tighten this up to where it's snug and that you can still move the handle well enough, but not too tight. And then once you get that adjusted, then you'll put the second nut on as a jam nut and jam them together, and then that should be done. Alright, so I got that tightened up. You don't want to go super tight. You want it to be able to move freely, but you don't want it so loose that any bouncing on the tractor would move it. So I think I'm at a good spot on that. Time will tell, but I think if it ends up being too tight or too loose, the dash comes off easy enough that where you could pull the bottom in and get up in there to tighten or loosen that. But for now, I think that's pretty good. So then we'll move on to the next step. The next item will be this cable they supply you. We'll get them routed down in through here somehow, and then this will fit in this bracket, and then they give you a pin and keeper, and this end will go right over that. Hopefully you can see it. And I'll get that kind of routed where it needs to be. It needs to come out down in here somewhere, and I'll figure that out and get right back to you. Okay, so here's where things start getting exciting. So now we're gonna come on the back side here and pull this pin here, and then pull the accelerator cable out. Then we'll take these two bolts out here, 12 millimeter, we'll get those loose, and we're going to pull this whole bracket off. And then they've got another bracket that will go in here, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so the next step here will be to take this piece, install it over that piece, and then take this snap ring and install it there. I've got my snap ring pliers here, and I'll get that put on real quick, and then this piece bolts up to where we just took that other piece off. So I'll get this on, get it up there. They gave you a new set of bolts for it, so I'll get those up there. Okay, so the next step is to take this bracket that they've supplied with the bearing they've supplied, get that bearing on there, then we'll put this flat washer on, then we'll put another snap ring on, then this piece will go on that bracket that we just installed. So I'll get that and I'll be right back. there it is, all put together. Now you come down, you slide this piece over that, like so. And then this is where I found out where this cable goes from up here. I didn't tighten anything down because I couldn't really figure out where it was going, but it looks like it's going to come right in here and come down to this bracket here. So I'll pull that back out because I don't want to kink it and cause problems. Get it mounted in here, routed to where it hooks up properly there. And then this end of it will come and mount in here. So I'll get that all routed and be right back. Well, I got it routed through there. It took a couple of tries because it's almost like this cable is just a bit too long for this. But I ended up going in between the two power steering hoses up there. When I went on this side of it, there's just so much of a kink, and I didn't want it really rubbing on that line. So now it's coming through, and it's not really rubbing on anything. It might be touching this zip tie right here, but I got it where I think is going to work good. And then what you do is you come down, and the other end of it you go through this bracket, and then they've got this special keeper that you use, and then it should be, according to their pictures, with the handle all the way forward at about a 45 here, which I think I'm fairly close. It might take some adjusting here when everything gets put together, but that should be pretty close to what it needs to be. And then I'll see what is up next. Okay, so the next thing is this accelerator connecting arm. That'll go onto that shaft down here, like so. And then another snap ring will go on the end of this, and then we'll start making some connections. The next step is to take this bushing, install it over this shaft here, take a keeper pin, put in just like that. That's good. So then the next piece goes on to this accelerator bracket, and it's a little bit more to it here. So what you want is that roller that we just installed to go into that slot, the bearing to go on the bottom of this piece, and then get it to come through to this piece here. Once it's through, washer, keeper, and that piece is installed. And we'll go on to the next. Okay, so the next thing is to take this spring, install it here, and then the other end comes up to that bracket we just installed, and there's a little pinhole right in the bottom here. We'll connect that into it. And this is going to probably take two hands, so I'll show you what it looks like when it's installed. Well, that was a lot easier to install than I thought it was going to be. There's just a hole on this side, so I looped it through on this side, and then this side is just an oversized head, and then there's a groove on the back side. It just snaps over that. Piece of cake. Onwards and upwards. Okay, so the next step is to put this accelerator cable that was here originally on the tractor back in, and then it's got its little plastic washer and clip, and I'll put those back together on the back side here, and that should be that for this section. The next step is to install this micro switch up here on this bracket for the handle. Now this goes underneath, and then the wires come out to the side that's against the bracket, and then they've supplied you with two very small bolts with lock washers and nut, and it looks like it's a screw head on one side, and then the nut will be a 4mm on the other. So I'm going to be very careful not to drop anything, because I think they'll disappear if I did. So I'll get this installed and be right back with you. There it is installed. The little trip is on the top. I have you get it fairly flush with the bottom here, and the wires, as much as they get kinked here, they're right up against this bracket. I'm not sure why they do that, but that's what they want. And then you take this harness that they supplied, and you look down in there, and you'll see the factory harness has an open slot, and you'll connect to that, bring it up, and connect the two wires to this. And one thing that I don't like about manufacturers these days is all these open connections. So if you didn't put these options on, this wire just sit there, bounce around in the elements, getting dirty and corroded over time. And I think that's a potential future wiring problem if you don't use them. And there's quite a few connectors on all these tractors for all these options, and they don't plug them off. I'm not sure why, but just kind of a gripe. So I'll get this connected and we'll move on to the next thing. That's now connected and just kind of sits loose in there. Thought about routing it through the hole back here or something, but it doesn't say to do that, so I'm just going to wait till I put the dash on and see if there's something that's touching it. If not, I'll leave it. Otherwise I might reroute that a bit. Then the next thing would be to come down here, and this bracket here has to come off. So what you've got to do is, there's a cotter pin down here, straighten that out, pull it out, take that washer off, and then let's see, maybe you can see it, there's two springs. There's one here and one right here. Those two springs come off, and then there's a snap ring here, which looks like it's going to be fun because it's completely painted on there. And then you'll pull this bracket completely out, and they have a whole new bracket to put in its place. So I'll get to working on that and show you my progress. Okay, so I got that bracket off. There ended up being a third spring attached to it. It's on the back side here. The instruction manual didn't say anything about it, so there'll be 3 of them, and you can see there that that's slotted there, and it's a good thing because that spring is pretty stiff, and it took all I could do to get it out of there. So then you'll just set this aside, and this is the bracket that replaces it. And you'll put it back in there, hook your springs back up, and then you'll put the washer and the cotter pin back through down here, and then put a snap ring up top, and then there's another bracket that attaches to this. So I'll get this put in and be right back. That's installed now, and luckily they give you a new snap ring, because the old one, getting it off, got spread out, so it was no good. But I used the old washer and the new snap ring, and then I'll come under here and hopefully you can see there's the 2 springs. This one will go to the back side, this one goes in the slot, and then this dampener spring goes up here on that pin. So I'll get those installed and we'll hit the next step. So now all that is back together. You can see the dampener down here, maybe this spring, and then the spring on the back side. So hopefully that'll kind of show you what's going on there. So the next thing is to take this bracket here, routed up underneath. We'll get the one end there. Put a washer and a keeper. And then up on this other side, which has this bracket already installed, we'll bring it up and we'll put a pin, washer, and keeper through this top hole, which is those sitting right there. And I'll get those thrown on, and then we should be pretty much wrapped up. And there's that bracket installed. Washer, keeper, feed it up underneath here to this front piece, and then pin, washer, and keeper in the upper hole. So other than that, I'll just go through here, make sure everything that needs to be tightened up is tightened up, and just check everything over, and then we'll be throwing the floor back together in the dash and taking her for a spin. So I'll be back in a flash. Okay, so I almost forgot the most important part. The green handle cover. Just slide that on like so. And now the project's pretty much done. I'll start putting things back together now. Okay, so the floor panel is in. Again, just be careful because it is metal and it is kind of awkward to get back in, because you've got to get this plus these two bolts that are underneath back in their holes. And I'll just stick the 8 bolts up here, and then the 3 nuts underneath, and then the floor should be secure. So I'll get that knocked out, and then we'll attack the pedals. Alright, so I got the 8 bolts around the center plate. The 1 bolt that holds the bottom of this plastic to the center console, and then the 3 nuts that hold this floor all tightened up. I got my pedals back in, and you can't screw these up because this pedal is just a flat piece. This pedal has spacers welded on the back side of it. These bolts are coarse and collared. These are fine and have a lock washer. So you can't mix them up. So now that I've got those back in, for the link pedal, it's just putting the dash back together. Before we slap this dash in, you're going to need to pull this center cover. That's where the handle is going to go through for the linked pedal. And on the back side, it's just a couple of snap rings. So you'll just push those together, and out she pops. Pretty simple. So now she's ready to go back together. There's the dash all back together. There's just the 1 screw here. There's 1 up here, and 1 on the other side right over there, and then the 1 down below here. And I just snugged them up. I didn't put much torque on them. It's just plastic, so I didn't want to break it, and they were not very tight when I took it off. So the next thing to do is just put my throttle knob back on, and the screw for it just in the back side here. I'll get that screwed in there, and then put the steering wheel on, and we should be ready to roll. Alright, so throttle cap's on, steering wheel's back on. The only thing left to put my Bobcat symbol back in. Just pushes right on. I'll peel that off here one of these days. Trying to keep things nice for as long as possible. Looks like crap with it, but at least it's still nice underneath. So yeah, I guess now is time to fire it up and see if everything works. Alright, so hopefully you can hear me. The link pedal, to turn it on, is to push it up. And then the light on the dash saying link pedal comes on. So now when you push the hydrostat pedal, the throttle's linked to it. So for some reason, it gives you full throttle in forward, but only half throttle in reverse. I've checked the linkages, I've read through the instructions again, and I did everything right. So I'm not sure why it won't give you full throttle in reverse. It might just be the way it's designed, but I'm gonna keep fiddling with it and see if there's something I'm missing. Alright, so now that everything's been tested and seems to be functioning, let's get down to how long this took for the linked pedal. Now the paperwork says that it should take about 2 hours. I would say that this probably took me over 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours to do. And it's not that it's a tough job. You know, the biggest factor is getting the steering wheel off, getting your dash off, and then there are quite a few linkages that you have to remove and replace, and the instructions are somewhat vague in some of the areas. So like with the cable from the link switch going down, and a couple other things that weren't really in the instructions, that slowed me down. But I think if I were to do it again, it would probably take me 2 to 2.5 hours. So I think a person could plan on that if you've got all the tools lined up and you're ready to rip. Otherwise, it's probably going to take 3 or a little more for someone to do. It looks like a daunting job when you read the instructions, but it's not really all that bad. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.